7 saves, nearly 2 expected goals denied, Belgium throwing wave after wave forward, and somehow the scoreboard still said 0-0. By the end of the night, one of the most talented squads in world football looked confused, frustrated, and almost annoyed by something they could not solve. Because every time they thought they finally found the opening, they ran into the same problem again. Alireza Beiranvand. And the strange part is that the game slowly stopped feeling like a football match. It started feeling like a siege. Belgium came into this World Cup match as the giant, the favorite, the team with stars everywhere, a so-called golden generation with names that had spent years playing on the biggest stages in Europe. The expectation was simple: control the game, break Iran down, move on. Instead, something very different started happening. Very early in the match, Belgium got exactly what they wanted: space, movement, pressure. The attack started building, dangerous areas opened up. Then there was a collision, a hard collision involving Romelu Lukaku and Beiranvand, and for a moment there was concern that history was repeating itself. Because people remembered what happened before. People remembered another World Cup, another painful moment, another opening match where Beiranvand's tournament ended after a head injury forced him off the field. So when he hit the ground this time, there was a question hanging over everything. Not again, not now. And that's where this story starts getting uncomfortable, because if you're Iran, you are not just losing a goalkeeper if he walks off. You're losing stability, you're losing confidence, you're losing the one player who can hold chaos together. But then something strange happened. He stayed, he got up, and Belgium probably wished he hadn't, because from that point onward, the match started becoming something else entirely. One save, then another, then another. At first they looked routine, then they stopped looking routine. Belgium started creating chances that usually end with commentators already shouting before the ball crosses the line. Those moments where everyone in the stadium thinks the outcome is obvious. Except it wasn't obvious anymore, because Beiranvand kept showing up in places that made no sense. One sequence in particular felt almost impossible. He was already grounded, out of position. The danger wasn't gone, the ball was still alive. Normally that's over, normally that's a goal. Then suddenly an arm appears, a hand gets there, the ball stays out, and people started asking the same question. How? Because goalkeepers aren't supposed to recover like that. Not repeatedly. Not after taking heavy contact earlier. Not while facing one of the strongest attacks in the tournament. But Belgium kept attacking, and that actually made things worse. Because every missed chance increased the pressure, every save changed the mood. You could almost feel it happening. The first reaction was confidence, then confusion, then frustration, then urgency. And football can become dangerous when a favorite starts feeling urgency. Because urgency creates mistakes. Belgium had the possession. Belgium had the pressure. Belgium had the opportunities. But football has this strange psychological effect where the game starts shrinking around one person. Suddenly, the attackers stop thinking naturally. They start thinking about the goalkeeper. Should I place it? Should I hit it harder? Should I wait? Should I go earlier? And once that starts happening, doubt enters the picture, and doubt spreads fast. By the middle stages of the match, Iran weren't just defending anymore, they were surviving. And surviving sounds simple until you look at the context behind all of this. Because Iran did not exactly arrive at this tournament under ideal conditions, far from it. While other teams had more stable preparation periods and smoother schedules, Iran had logistical challenges surrounding travel and training time, moving between locations, limited preparation windows, less stability, not exactly the kind of setup designed to help a team compete against tournament favorites. And yet somehow the team on the field with more problems looked calmer than the team with more stars. That's where people started paying attention, because underdog stories are normal. Football loves underdog stories. But this felt different. This wasn't a lucky deflection. This wasn't parking 11 players behind the ball and escaping with chaos. This was one player refusing to allow reality to follow the expected script, and the statistics only made it look crazier. 7 saves. 7. Nearly 2 expected goals denied. Player of the match. Even Belgium's own goalkeeper Thibaut Courtois acknowledged the level of performance, and when elite goalkeepers start recognizing another goalkeeper's performance, people notice. Because goalkeepers understand things others don't. They understand positioning that nobody sees, tiny reactions, split-second decisions, movements that happen before the shot even arrives. And Beiranvand had suddenly produced one of those performances that goalkeepers remember. But then people started looking backward, because that's when the story became bigger than one game. Beiranvand's journey doesn't look like the normal story of an international football star. He wasn't born into football luxury. He wasn't raised in academies with perfect facilities. He came from a nomadic shepherd family. At 12 years old, he reportedly ran away to Tehran chasing a football dream. Think about how ridiculous that sounds. A child leaving home with an idea, no guarantees, no safety net, no certainty. He worked jobs, car washing, factory work, different tasks just trying to survive while chasing football. And then there was another strange detail, the throwing. As a child, he played traditional stone-throwing games, not football, throwing. And over time, he developed this unusual arm strength that eventually became one of his trademarks as a professional goalkeeper. It's almost absurd. Because sometimes football creates stories that sound made up. A shepherd's son becomes a goalkeeper. A child leaves home chasing an impossible dream. Years later, that same person stands in a World Cup and turns into a wall against one of football's giants. But this is where the pressure starts building. Because now expectations change, and expectations can become dangerous. Before Belgium, Iran were chasing survival. After Belgium, people started asking bigger questions. Could they actually do this? Could they actually reach the knockout stages for the first time ever? And suddenly one draw starts carrying enormous weight. Because now another game waits. Egypt, another test, another chance at history. And history can create strange pressure. Because now Iran aren't just a team fighting to stay alive anymore. Now they're a team standing near something they've never touched before. And that changes everything. Because momentum in tournaments can be real, confidence can be real, belief can be real, but belief can also disappear fast. One mistake, one bad night, one moment, and everything changes. There is also a counter-argument here. Some people will say this was simply one great performance, one extraordinary night. Goalkeepers do this sometimes. They become unbeatable for 90 minutes and then football returns to normal. That's fair. But the reason people are still talking about this isn't only because of the saves, it's because of what the saves represented. Resilience after the collision. Resilience after previous World Cup pain. Resilience despite difficult preparation. Resilience despite expectations. One performance suddenly started feeling like evidence of something larger, and that's what makes this story dangerous for everyone else in the group. Because nobody fears teams that expect to lose. They fear teams that stop believing they're supposed to lose. And after Belgium, Iran looked like a team changing its own story in real time. The question now isn't whether Alireza Beiranvand had an incredible night. That part is obvious. The question is much bigger. Because sometimes World Cups create one moment where a tournament suddenly shifts. One player changes the atmosphere, one result changes belief, one night changes what people think is possible, and if Belgium walked into that game expecting to face Iran, they may have accidentally created something much more difficult. Because now everyone else has to face a team that thinks history is finally listening,